I'll let you in on something that most therapists experience. We think about our clients and their situations, and we often try to come up with different perspectives that we can offer to them. But the trick isn't the idea, it's how you describe it. So we all come up with stories or metaphors or phrases that we're convinced will help somebody see something in a new way. And sometimes that works. But we've all had stuff that we think is really great that just falls flat. So we tell it to the client, and the client is, oh, yeah. Anyway, this awful thing happened at work last week. It goes nowhere. And a couple of months later, you find yourself in a similar situation with a different client, and you think, this was so great. I'm going to try it out again, and you get the same result. Nothing. Sometimes this happens because it's based on something that resonates with our own experience, but nobody else's. So today you're going to get one of those, because where else am I going to use it? And maybe it'll fall flat with you too. Let's find out. Now, I'm not that big on video games because, hey, I'm old. And there's too much else going on. But in my 20s, I liked playing a version of Dungeons and Dragons that was computer driven, but text only. I know, I'm that old. Fun fact, we used the computer in the lab of Doctors Anne Treisman and Daniel Kahneman. Treisman was a real powerhouse in the field of cognitive psychology, and Kahneman is the only psychologist ever to have won the Nobel Prize for Economics. You might remember his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. I owe a huge amount of my career to Anne Treisman, frankly, if not the whole thing. Anyway, the lab staff used her computer after hours to play D&D, and you know how this goes. You're looking for stuff, and there are different levels, and the book with the anagram in it can only be found 4 levels down and through a blue door. You have to be on the right floor. Now, this game became so much a part of my consciousness that I think it's given me some ways of thinking that have stuck with me. Now, there's another metaphor if you don't like that one. Big department store. Menswear on 3, women's on 2, sporting goods on 5, furniture on 6, cafes on 3 and 5. Depending on what you want, you have to be on the right floor. Okay, your mind is like that department store or that dungeon. There are different kinds of experiences available, but you have to be on the right floor to find them. You wind up on different floors of your mind by doing different things. If you do the same thing all the time, your mind will tend to be in the same space and respond the way it usually does when you're like that. For example, a lot of people try to drive themselves to 100% of their capacity. Sometimes that's their nature. Sometimes that's what their life or workplace demands of them. Many of us find ourselves there at least some of the time. You've got so much to do that fitting it all in feels like playing Tetris. I need to do this at 2 o'clock and then that at 2:30. But if I go this way, I also have time to swing past Home Depot and get that, which will leave me just enough time to, and so on. I hate it when my life is like that. People who live their lives like that constantly often wonder why their emotional lives seem so constricted. They go from anxiety to exhaustion, and the sense of a rich internal life that they might remember from earlier just doesn't seem accessible anymore. It isn't, because it's not on that floor. While you are living that way, you may not be able to access all of your emotional experience. I think that if you're in that very high-speed pattern with a rigid, packed schedule, juggling 3 cell phones, the full spectrum of emotional experience just isn't available to you. You have to change your life. You have to go to a different floor, at least for a while. Another example. Some people want to find that sense of stillness and calm, like those meditation pictures you often see, usually with somebody sitting at the end of a dock on a lake, that feeling. How do I get there? Well, if your entire life is taken up with distractions, I don't think you do. You have to change the way your mind is working and go down a floor or two. If you can't spend a few moments of stillness without picking up your phone or checking the internet, your mind is in a place where that sense of deeper calm can't exist. If you suggest that the person leave the phone and just sit, they'll often get agitated. They can't do it. Some people are so socially engaged, checking in every 2 minutes and constantly interacting with others, that they can't imagine a sense of solitude or any sense of peace emerging from that. Even an evening alone is a scary prospect because their mind is such an enemy to them that they fear what it will do. But it's only by facing that and pushing yourself gently into that situation or onto that floor that you get used to it. The fear and agitation subside and different experiences become available. And the transition takes time. The escalator in this department store is slow. When I'm going away on an extended holiday, there's all kinds of stuff I have to get done. The house has to be organized. People have to know I'm not going to be available. There are dozens of things I need to do with the clinic to make sure nothing goes off the rails while I'm gone. The list is really long, so I'm running around trying to get everything done. And for the last week, I'm usually not thinking too much about the holiday. I'm not even looking forward to it. I don't have time. And then we turn the key in the lock and head off in the car or out to the airport. And I'm taking that same mental stance with me. I'm still on that same floor. I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this. But all I really have to do is sit in the airport or on a train and read my book, and somebody will bring lunch to me. It's over. There aren't really any demands. But it takes time to make that transition. And often it's only a few days later, sometimes a week later, that I realize I don't have to do any of that stuff. Another example. I have a place in the country. Friends come from the city, and when they first arrive, they're often in that same state. Okay, we're here. What do we need to do now? Should we get out of the hedge trimmer? Do we need to unpack the car? Should we go swimming? I usually leave them alone for a little bit. Sometimes I feel kind of pressured. They're spinning so fast that they need something to do. But what they need to do is change floors. Go get some water. Lie in the hammock for a bit. What about a sense of engagement or flow or being excited with your life? A lot of people have withdrawn from life so much that they can't imagine things like working at a job or having to be at a certain place at a certain time or working steadily on a project until it's done. And they're right. In that state of mind, they can't really do those things. They're on the wrong floor. They need to go up a level. And the question is, where's the escalator? How do they get on it? And how do they retain the ability to come back to this floor on the couch when they want to? A lot of people sense something lacking in their lives. Their social self, their solitary self, their calm self, their productive self, their sexual self. And that's why they're unhappy. And often, that's why they go for therapy. They look at their minds and they cannot find something they need. It's not there. It's not on that floor. It's up 2 levels. It's down 2 levels. Sportswear, 5th floor. It's not that it's not in you. It's not on this floor. You can look all you like, you're not going to find it. You need to access a different part of yourself. And often that means you need to do something. You need to find the way to make the transition to another part of yourself. You need to find the escalator. Usually that involves some kind of behavior, taking gradual steps, moving out of your comfort zone, doing something that feels, with your current mindset, fake or awkward, like you're an imposter, until you're fully onto that new floor and that new way of being. In a video game, we often talk about leveling up. In Dungeons and Dragons, sometimes the further down you get, the better. In different levels, you typically have different powers. The place is different, that you are different too. That's what we're talking about here. The missing parts of you aren't just lacking, they're on a different floor from the one you're on. The trick is to find the transition that helps you enter that part of yourself. It's, again, like an escalator, but it might be a particular setting or a behavior or an activity. If I'm feeling a bit sludgy or scattered and I can't find my organized, productive self, often it's because, weirdly enough, I haven't been exercising much lately. I know where that escalator is. If I exercise most mornings, that opens the door to that other self, and I can begin to feel on top of things again. If I'm feeling disconnected from myself, often it's because I've been responding so much to external demands that I've lost touch with what's important to me. Now, there are a couple of doorways to that more connected self for me, but one of those, oddly enough, is coastal rainforest, where I grew up. If I get into the wilderness, preferably in mountains, it's like a battery charger for me. I can feel things getting clearer. Now let's face it, right? That's completely illogical. The simple sight of a mountain or the bark on a tree shouldn't change my mental state, but it does. So one way to be miserable is to spend your life on the wrong floor, or to search over and over and over again only on that floor for what's missing in your life. Forget all about the idea of gateways to other aspects of yourself. Look for the cafeteria on the second floor of the department store, even though you know it's not there. Or wait for that part of yourself to find you. Chances are it's not looking for you. You need to find it, and it's not in your current setting. You need to find the gateway. To not be miserable, you may need to accept that you are not entirely one person. You have different sub-aspects of yourself that are not completely stitched together. And you're not exactly the same person at all times and in all settings. And if you sense that a part of yourself is missing, a part that you want or need or are starving without, there may be certain behavioral keys that can unlock that aspect of yourself. Part of wisdom isn't necessarily to become the same person at all times. It's to know where the keys are.